Welcome to I'll Marry You, a podcast with me, Olivia Coleman, full of tips and tricks from the UK wedding scene, interviews with industry experts, and a whole lot of oversharing. I've just come on to film today's intro, and I've realised quite how messy my top is. I'm so sorry. It's that sort of slightly shiny texture that really attracts all the stains. So if you're watching this, I can only apologise. Also, don't know what the stains are. And I'm wearing a hair mask, so I look ridiculous, and it's crusty to the touch. Crusty. How are you all? Hope you all had a good week. I've had the most wonderful but also kind of manic weekend. We went to Legoland, didn't we? We went to Legoland in Windsor because it was Lola's 5th birthday yesterday, and that's like been her dream. Although I was slightly worried that when we announced the surprise that she would go, why not Disneyland? Because I don't want to remortgage the house, child, okay? Anyway, we went to Legoland and it was lovely. Very good, very clean, very reasonably priced. I went on a roller coaster on my own, which is a strange thing, I've decided, because for kids, we had to take turns, obviously, because Lola would go on a ride with James, my husband, and then I would be with Penelope, the baby, or vice versa. And Lola didn't want to go on this roller coaster because, quite frankly, it was terrifying. But I went on my own, and it's an odd thing. It's like you want to go, woo, and you want to smile, but you feel very self-conscious doing that when you're on your own. It's weird. I don't know. How do you feel about roller coastering on your own? And then yesterday was the birthday itself, so I had to make a 3-tier wedding cake because that's what she wanted. I went for 2 tiers and I half made it with the help of my friend Marks and Spencer. But that's what she said she wanted. She said, Mummy, I want a bride cake. I want it to be a big cake, a medium cake and a baby cake. So it's a 3-tier wedding cake is what she wanted. It's my own fault, really. I influence her. And so in the end, yes, it was just 2. And she liked it, but she did comment on the fact that it wasn't 3. But Mama, there's just a medium and a baby. Where's the big? Okay, I can't do it all. Okay, I can't do it all. I've had a baby attached to my tit all morning. So there's been little, actually, that I can do. Full stop. So that's me. Now, this weekend is my first wedding back. And I'm not terrified. I'm anxious. I'm a little nervous, and it's not just the fact that my tits might leak at the altar. It's like I always get nervous for the first wedding back because I haven't done one for a while. My last one was when I was heavily pregnant. 13th of December was my last one. So it's a couple of months out, and I just get nervous. I get anxious, but I'm sure it'll be absolutely fine. I'm very excited. It's quite local. My husband's going to have the kids. That makes me nervous in itself, but I'm sure it'll be brilliant. It'll be fun. Anyway, I'll let you know how it goes. Enjoy today's episode. It is part 2 of an interview with Charlotte from Perfect Cakes. I loved last week, so I'm really excited to see this week's as well. I hope you enjoy it, and I will catch up with you all next week. Bye!
The funny thing about cakes, and I always say this to all my couples, is they're incredibly resilient cakes. When they're made well, oh my God, you're not going to knock it over unless I have actually had one in the past.
Knock it over.
I got sent a video it was actually from a venue, not the venue that the wedding cake was set up. I was a friend who's got a venue saying, did you see what happened to your cake? And I was like, no, what? And this was probably about 3 or 4 years ago. And she sent me this video that a guest had obviously taken. And it was the couple cutting my cake. And they were cutting it with a sword because he was in the military.
Yeah.
And the funny thing about this cake is it was one of my floating tier cakes, which I do quite a lot of. And I tell couples that you can't cut it like you would normally because there is a metal plate on the top of the lower tier. There's a metal plate. You can't cut through it. Even with a sword.
On the top of the lower tier, so not on the bottom of the upper tier.
Floating tier, below the floating tier, where there's the gap, there is a metal plate on the whole of the top of that cake. So a lot of people would logically go and cut down there, if that makes sense. That would be like, it looks like an open space ready to be cut.
Yeah.
So I always say to my couples, you can't cut there. You have to cut the bottom tier. You have to kind of go in and down rather than just the logical space. But this couple, you could tell they were quite intoxicated. They're a lovely couple.
Yeah.
And they literally had this sword. So they were stood about a meter away from the cake. It was on a cake stand, like a traditional cake stand that like this. So obviously like weight wise anyway, it's fine on there, but you push it with the weight of the cake.
Yeah.
And
not totally.
They were counting down and they were swaying.
Oh God! Oh God!
They went to cut it, and obviously they went to cut through a metal plate. Obviously nothing happened, and then something happened, and they kind of pushed, and the whole of the cake just went timber straight down onto the floor. The whole of the wedding cake. It was a piece on it actually. I mean, I was thoroughly entertained. Some people were very mortified on my behalf. I find it funny when people get offended on your behalf for a cake that when it leaves me, I have no attachment to that cake. Zero. Like,
oh, really?
Not a single one. People are like, I can't cut it. I'm like, I can. I'll cut it for you. Like, I have no emotional attachment to any of my cakes. It's weird. Even my children's cakes, when I make them, I'm happy to cut them up at the end.
Oh, no, see, I struggle even if I buy something nice from a farm shop. Well, I'm like, it's too pretty to cut.
I think if I'd spent money on it, that would be different. Like, do you see what I mean? Like, if I...
Yeah, you're ever so materialistic, aren't you? Yeah.
If I spent, like, the £700 myself on it, I think I'd probably feel the same. But because I haven't spent money on it, I've been paid to do it, I'm just like, go you.
On to the next.
So the cake cutting, for me, when I do my consultations, which are very long, that sounds terrible, but they're very in-depth. And a lot of what I talk to the couple about is things like cutting your cake. Because so many couples say to me, I saw the cake, I saw someone do like a ceremonial cutting, and then we never saw a cake after that. Like, what's the point in having a cake that serves this many people? And I'm like, that's because they haven't been told what to do with it. They haven't talked to their venues about what's going to happen to it. So I always say to my couples, when are you going to cut the cake? What time? Because that's really important. And I normally advise them to cut it early, even not cut it up, but just do the photos, because otherwise you're going to end up with you're going to be 3 songs deep into Mr. Brightside. You're going to have a tie around your head. You're going to have purple disco lights on the cake ready for your cutting. And it's just, it's not the vibe for them, but also not the picture I want to see when I get sent you lovely cake photos.
You're absolutely right. And this bride that I planned the wedding for, who was into the cake, they cut it so we organised it so that they came into their dinner, their wedding breakfast. Yeah, they walked around and they cut it before they even sat down, and then it was taken away, and then the catering team had time to cut it all up and serve it with the dessert. It was like the dessert.
Yeah, it depends, because a lot of people's argument with that is, well, my guests won't see it, or they're going to have barely any time. They spend a lot of money on the cake. They want people to see it. But I always say to them, you can do the cut, but not cut it up. But get, your photos. And I love, and it's becoming definitely a much more common thing now, is like a private first look that the couples do, where they walk in together. Because I always say this as well, like when you get into the room after all your guests are in there, there's blazers on the chairs, napkins going around, kids are everywhere. Like, you're not seeing that money you've just paid for your wedding. You want to see it perfect at the start. So I think a 100%. Private first look, where you just do, like you say, a lap of the room, you take your photographer in and you just go and have a look at everything before the absolute chaos ensues, is 100%. The most beautiful thing. And it is.
And also, quite often, if it's a bride and groom, the groom will be there early, so he might see stuff.
Yeah.
But 9 times out of 10, again, if it's a heterosexual couple, she's probably organised 95% of it, and then she doesn't get to see it.
Exactly. And I absolutely, and I like to say, I agree. That's the time when I'm always like, if you want to do just your ceremonial cut, get a lovely photo. The lighting's better because it's daylight rather than nightlight. Like, there's just so many. Or I say, if you're not going to do it then, do it straight after your food. Straight after your food, while the lighting is still usually quite good. Not at 9 o'clock in the evening.
No. Do it the next day like I did when you're sober enough to do it.
Do that. Just keep it. But I do always have long discussions with my couples about what's going to happen to it after you've done this ceremonial cut. Like, speak to your venue. Do they have a cutting fee? Which, if they do...
Venues have a cutting fee?
Some venues have cutting fees. They will charge you per slice to cut it.
No. Per slice?
I don't work with any of those venues.
Oh my God, I mean, I know of venues that like, I used to call them, back when I worked at a venue, I used to call them Apple weddings in that, you buy an iPhone and then you need to buy the iPhone charger and the iPhone case. And so there are venues I know that are
the
like,
lights on, you have to pay extra. Like that's
exactly. Yeah. You go on a tour and the fire's on and the fairy lights are on, but actually when it comes down to it, you have to pay for the logs and you have to pay. And that, I mean, I know a venue that charges £1 a chair if you want to have your ceremony outside.
If you want to sit down.
Oh, it's unbelievable. To me, it's just like, this is a incredibly expensive project and you're making it more expensive, but also more complicated. Yeah. Just add all that shit up yourself, Karen, and give someone a simple
final price. Yep, I agree. But yeah, cake cutting, there are venues. And like I say, I don't work with them. As in, I wouldn't become a recommended supplier for a venue that charges to cut your cake up, because I'm just like, you've already paid a lot of money for your cake in the first place. Cut it up yourself. Don't ever pay for a cake cutting. Be like, I'll get so-and-so to do it instead, because it's just ludicrous. But I always talk to them about it. I always say, check with your venue, because you don't want to be smacked with that as a bill afterwards with like, oh, by the way, to cut up your cake, here's your bill for us to have cut up your cake.
I'd lose my shit.
Exactly. So I always talk to them about that. And I always talk to them about, where is it going to go? Like, what happens to your cake? They take it away, they cut it up. Where does it go? Are they going to take it and serve it around to people? And if they don't serve it, get one of your groomsmen, maybe not groomsmen, because usually by that time of night they're a little bit tiddly.
Why wouldn't they serve it?
So a lot of venues won't. They'll just bring it out and put it down somewhere. And normally as well, if you haven't chatted to them about it, they might put it down somewhere inconspicuous in a corner where nobody knows where it is.
And nobody eats it.
Exactly. So I talk them all through suggestions, and I also communicate that with my handover sheet with the venue, tips on how to make sure people are eating this cake. Only cut half of the cake first, put that out. If it goes, then cut the other half. Because if it's not cut up, you can save it, you can give it out to family the next day, you can freeze it, whatever you want to do. As soon as it's cut into those little sections and put out, the next morning, it ain't going to be any good to eat. Well, maybe hungover, but you know what I mean? Like, you're not getting your quality cake. Yeah. So I always say, like, if the venue are not going to do a lap of the room, just get one of your family members or someone. It takes 5 minutes. The cake will go. You take cake to someone, they will eat it. But if they have to go find it, they're not going to be going and finding it unless they're a massive cake eater. So
I think that's the same with any evening food as well.
Yeah, 100%.
I've been to weddings where you don't even know it's there. And I would always say to my couples the same thing, like, make sure people know about it.
Yeah.
Make sure make sure people, because people, if it's there, people will eat it.
Yeah.
If bring it to them,
they will eat it. Exactly, 100%. And then I always say to them, when you're done with the lap, put it down somewhere that's got high footfall. It could be the door in and out. If it's a hot day, the door, put it by a table by the door where people are walking past it constantly. Put it on the bar, it will go. I mean, when you're waiting, it will go. Evening food, sometimes it's great to put it by that, but people have to remember to come back because they don't normally get, burger and cake.
I do.
Oh, yeah. Some people do this. But yeah, that's all part of something that I'm very adamant that I want couples to get their money's worth. Like, you're spending a lot of money. I want you to get the most for your money. Don't buy a cake that is serving every single member of your wedding unless there is a pudding. If it's being served as a dessert, you need to make sure you feed everyone.
Okay, so if you're serving it not as a dessert, it's just as an extra, as your wedding cake, what percentage of your guests would you suggest?
I usually say the majority, but not everyone. So if somebody had 100 people coming to their wedding, and if you're cutting it up in the evening, you also want to include evening guests, because obviously they're going to be there too. And normally they're the hungry ones. They're the ones who are looking for the food because they haven't just had a 3-course meal about 2 hours earlier. Yeah. So I normally say the majority. So if you had 100 guests with evening guests, I would say an 80 portion cake would be absolutely fine. Sometimes as well, I always say to people, have you ever come away from a wedding and been like, it was the worst wedding, I didn't get a slice of cake? No. Like, nobody has ever said that. It's not a thing. Because the people who love cake will find the cake and they'll probably have a couple of portions. And the people who aren't particularly bothered, it's not going to ruin their night.
Yes,
so
you're right.
Generally, you want it all to be eaten, but you don't want it to be left over. Whereas there are some people who they say to me, we are massive cake people. And I'm like, do you want leftovers? And they'll say yes. And therefore I'm like, right, okay. Go more. Do you know what I mean? Because you want them for the next day, or you want some for you to have as a couple. Some couples keep like the top tier in order to eat, not to save, just for them to have. Because again, as a bride and groom at your wedding, or a groom and groom, bride and bride, whatever the situation, a lot of the time, you don't get all of the fun things that you paid for at your wedding.
I know. Like, it's so true.
I remember at my wedding, I didn't eat a single canapé. I didn't get any free champagne, all of this stuff, because you're just being pulled from pillar to post. So you don't get all the stuff you paid for your guests to have. So it's nice to keep it back.
What about the idea of having a wedding cake? Like, if you've got 100 guests, you have a wedding cake that is 2-tier and serves 40, but then you would also have you'd make a sheet cake or a tray bake that is the same.
I do that a lot. I do that a lot with my cakes, because a lot of my cakes are designed to be a certain size. Like, you can't just keep adding tiers on. So they're designed to be, and sometimes people come with like, oh, I love this cake. I'm like, okay, well, the maximum we can do that size-wise will only serve 50 people. Like, I can't make that design bigger because it just wouldn't work with the aesthetics. So I always say to my couples, we will make a cake that suits the visual size and everything that you want. And if you want more portions, we can do kitchen cakes. Absolutely fine. We can do extra portions in the kitchen. They get cut up at the same time. Nobody knows any different. And obviously that way you can have the exact design you want without just adding tiers on for the sake of portions, but you can still get all the portions you want. And I do that a lot with sort of a lot of the farming weddings I do, that, you know, they've got like 250 people coming, and I'm like,
and farming weddings are absolutely massive.
They are, exactly. And they don't want, and I usually, you know, I'm like, we have not got enough stuff to paint on this cake to do 7 tiers. 3 tiers is plenty, but they want obviously to serve a lot more people. So, and the great thing about doing that as well is I then encourage them to have more flavours. So you're having like a 3 which have different flavours, but then we're also going to have 3 cutting cakes with different flavours. So rather than one massive sheet cake, you're going to get 3 more flavours to top up, you know, what people want. And you end up with a medley. So kitchen cakes are a great idea.
Plethora of flavours. I know that you kind of, maybe I'm wrong in saying, but I think that you specialise in like country scenes. Do you do people a lot? Do you paint people or not?
Do you know what? It's my bugbear. Do you want to know the one thing that I cannot paint? It's
men.
Feet, hands, and end of limbs. Like,
why would you be painting feet onto a cake? That's absurd.
If you're painting a person, they have feet.
Well, first of all, in this day and age, not everyone. Second of all, wear a glove and a boot. I don't understand. They're not barefoot.
Still can't do it. I mean, I'm not talking bare feet. I'm just talking shoes. So I challenge you, go and have a look at any of my country painted cakes. You will never find a foot, a hoof, or a paw. Like, it just doesn't happen.
Stop it.
They're always in grass, or like there's always something. They're not there because...
Oh my God, that's hilarious.
I hate it. I can't do it. And for that reason, I don't like painting people. Because...
Okay.
And I'll tell you for why.
When
you paint a dog, the dog's not going to be offended that it doesn't look exactly like the dog. Do you know what I mean?
Like, but he won't tell you.
As long as, you know, if it's a black spaniel, as long as it's black and spaniel-y, the couple love it. They're so happy it's their dog. With people, as we discussed at the start of this podcast, some people think they look different to how they actually look.
They do.
And when you're sent a picture and you're working off pictures, I always have that, like, what do I do? Do I paint it exactly like that? Or like, and a lot of the time I don't have, for example, if I'm painting a couple and they want them in their wedding attire, for example, like they'll send me a picture of them in their wedding dress, but it's not the angle I need. But then also send me another picture that's them at the angle I need. And I'm piecing, you know, it together. And they'll send me their hair and they'll send me and I'm just like, I'm trying to piece together a puzzle of the person. And I just know that, you know, I don't want to offend anyone by slightly doing
it's a bit like being a caricature
and anything like that. So normally with people, I paint them from behind.
Which is, I think, the best angle.
Exactly.
Anyway.
So normally, a lot of the time, if we have people on the cake, unless it's a specific photo that they've said we want this on there, we will integrate the people, but you will not see their face because the face is the hard bit. So it will be like them on their quad bike from behind, or them herding their sheep from like behind. Yeah. So all I have to really deal with is the body sort of, a rough size and the colours of their clothes. And that's it.
Have you done any weird themes? Like a Halloween cake or a Harry Potter cake or a...
No, it's been a long time since I did a themed wedding cake, and I haven't done any for a very long time.
Surprises me.
Occasion
because
cake.
I would come to you with a themed wedding cake.
Pardon?
I would come to you if I wanted a themed wedding cake. You're the first person I call.
It's funny because I think a lot of the time themed wedding cakes get quite a bad rep. And I think
a lot of the time they're ridiculous.
Yeah, I think I treat themed wedding cakes more like an occasion cake. Obviously, it will be treated as a wedding cake, but what I mean is like what I can't this is, again, just putting out there, this is a personal opinion. Please, nobody take offence. People always take offence when I say I don't like something.
Don't worry. I share my opinion all the time. It's amazing I've not yet been cancelled. So just, the listeners of this podcast are used to it. You can just say what you want.
What I absolutely hate are tacky themed wedding cakes. So cakes where they're like a white cake at the front, you go around the back and they're like a reveal of Star Wars or like, I can't deal with that. And to be honest, as a cake maker in general, I will avoid themes for copyright reasons. And I know people think that's absolutely ridiculous and they're like, oh God, Disney, I'm going to come after you. But I've got quite a big platform now and who knows? I don't fancy...
Disney could come after you.
I'm not a risk taker. I've never been a risk taker in life. I don't like to break the rules. So for me personally, I'd rather just steer away from it. So if your theme that you came at me with was a safari theme, 100% I'm on it. But if it was Lion King, I would be like, no, we're not doing that. Do you see what I mean? So it's like, and I would then treat that wedding cake like an occasion cake in the sense that I just have to get the wedding bit out of my head slightly because I need to go full on in the theme. I have had an inquiry for next year where they want like a dragon and all of this. And a lot of people would be like, oh no, but I'm like, I can see how I could make that. It wouldn't feel like a wedding cake, but it could be an epic cake in general. Because those are my favourite occasion cakes to make, are the ones that are just ludicrous. Like ludicrous, I usually make them for my children because nobody else will order them.
Nobody else will have them. And in my mind, you're like in your studio and you're doing a dragon cake or a Gruffalo cake and you're in like costume and you're listening to the soundtrack and you're like, I'm really getting into this. Yeah, I have to watch
whatever film, whatever we're making at the time. I'll be like, Animals of Farthing Wood are on most of the time in my house.
How, what's the ratio of like, when you say occasion cakes or birthday cakes, are you doing like happy 4th birthday Timmy? Or are you doing like a retirement cake for Gary and there's a lot of golf clubs?
So it's funny because during wedding season, I do barely any occasion cakes. So I just don't have time. So, you're sort of April to September. If you've booked one in a year in advance, you might get an occasion cake. But other than that, you're not getting one because I just don't have the time and I don't want to. Out of season is when I tend to get, obviously, birthday cakes, christening cakes, quite prominent because they're usually, quite a big event as well. Birthday cakes, the ones that blow my mind are the happy first birthday with a budget of, and I'm just like some of them I do, and I think
what's going on? They're one.
Exactly. But the thing I love about that is it means the parent gets to choose the theme. It's not down to the child coming at you with Minecraft and all that rubbish. Like it's down to the parent and what the parent wants. And I'm like, I am all for that. After, maybe 4 or 5, it's funny, I don't do cakes. I probably do first birthday cakes, second birthday cakes. We sometimes go up to 4 with kids who are probably, shall we say, from quite wealthy families who the themes are, like I say, not TV programs because I don't do character cakes. That is my one. I don't do them unless it's Bluey because I like Bluey.
Sure.
But like, you're not getting a Spider-Man cake out of my kitchen, not a chance. So generally, when you get past the stage of parents choosing, I don't get the business anymore because people want character cakes and I don't do that. I don't do it. I hate it. Absolutely hate them.
I think there's no problem. I mean, yes, okay, we might be offending people, but there's no problem in knowing what you're good at and knowing what you do and knowing what you don't do. I don't do themed weddings. It's not my bag. It's not my story. There are a lot of celebrants, and I mean a lot of celebrants.
There's lots of people who do the stuff that I don't do.
Yeah.
And I think people have serious issues. And I'm very controversial on social media because I do say what I do and don't do. And people constantly come at you with, it's the customer's choice. You should just do what the customer wants. And I'm like,
do you get hate? Do you get hate on social
so
media?
much hate on social media.
Ooh.
Yeah. I got the biggest amount of hate I've ever got was for my son's birthday cake last year because I made him a cake with him on his bike. Like it was a painting of him on his bike because he loves biking. And I got told that is not what a 5-year-old would want. They would want Spider-Man, and I am a ludicrous parent. Honestly, some of the hate I get is absolutely diabolical because I have not made him what he wants. Like, but you don't know what he wants. You don't know my kid. And he did want this. I get so much hate for it. But and people just cannot comprehend children not wanting the other stuff. And don't get me wrong, like a lot of the time, my child might come to me and say, I want a Spider-Man birthday cake. And I'll go, that's purely because they've been conditioned that every party they go to is that. That is what they get. So therefore, for me, I usually go back with, but you don't watch Spider-Man. But she doesn't. So what do you like? What do you like doing? And they'll be like, oh, I like this, that, and the other. I'm like, well, let's do that because they don't know. They do now. I think they've learned now that anything is possible. But like, I just think they are so sheltered in what they see that by saying to a child, let's think of something different, that's not saying you don't like this. We're still going to pick something you absolutely love, but it's just not what everyone else has because you think that's all that's possible, basically.
I can't believe that people hate on your parenting. That is mental.
Oh, yeah, I get hate on parenting a lot for when I make my kids cakes. I mean, I do rile them up a bit. I do try, social media, you have to give a little bit. This year, I did my son's giraffe cake, and he specifically asked for a mummy, daddy, baby giraffe, and a zebra. I don't know where the zebra came in, like some adopted child or something, whatever. So I created it, and then I think, or was it my other ones? I can't remember, but I put a little caption that says something like, another year of manipulating my child into having the cake I want. And obviously, as a joke, no, internet can't deal with it. They cannot deal with it. Obviously, in the captions, I was like, that is not the case. He asked for this. He wanted this. He did not want the Spider-Man cake. People still come at you. Absolutely.
You know what? This is the only reason why I'm not famous is because I say what I think, and what I think is often inappropriate.
No, because that would make you famous. Social media loves controversial. They absolutely love it. It loves it.
But I can't bear the idea of people not liking me.
Oh, I don't care about that. The people who get me, know me, like me. The people who don't, that's fine by me. Because a lot of the time, the issue people have with when it comes to businesses, this is the thing. You sit there and you think, I'm a business. I'm putting a cake. It's a cake. Like, why are you so interested in a cake?
Well,
I sit there and I think, well, my clients, the people who do like what I do and like my style, and they don't want the same cake as every other child has, they will come to me and they will buy off me because that's what they want. The people who don't like it, they won't. So it's fine. They can hate me. That's okay. It doesn't make any difference.
I do think that comes with age. When I was a teenager and in my early 20s, I was like, I have to be popular. Everyone has to love me. And I was such a people pleaser. Whereas now, the older I get, in business and doing all that stuff, the more I'm like, well, this is what I do. This is who I am. And if you don't like it, that's fine. You have to read about it.
With age, grown to not like people in general. I'm such an introverted extrovert. Like, I could stand up and talk to 500 people, but I don't really want any of them coming to me afterwards and speaking to me. Like, do you know what I mean? Like, I really dislike just being around people.
One thing I liked about lockdown was that you could only see 6 people at a time. I was like, I really want to keep that rule.
That was my dream.
And I'd be like, sorry, I'm social distancing.
Yeah. I mean, I had to social distance from my own family. It's amazing. But I think I'm very good with people, but I would choose not to be if I could choose. But yeah, if people don't like what I do, I also think it's really important to have boundaries in a business, because if you don't have boundaries, and the reason I have boundaries is because I've spent a very long time doing a lot of things I don't like and I don't enjoy. And that makes me procrastinate and not do the work and then be up until 3 o'clock in the morning, 4 o'clock in the morning, making something that I hate because I put it off for so long.
Yeah.
And I got to the point where I went, why am I doing it? I don't need to be doing this anymore. Like, I don't need to be making figurines of cars. That's one of my boundaries. I don't do that. So why am I doing it? And I find it very easy now to say to people, unfortunately, I don't do that, but I can do my style. I can do this in my the way I do my cake. But if you don't want that, I can recommend somebody who will do it for you. Like, it's absolutely fine to pass business on to someone who wants to do that stuff. Absolutely fine.
No, I do that. Out of all the people that have booked me, there's been a very few that haven't, and that's the end of that. No, and one of them didn't, and they said to their wedding planner, "We want someone who's more serious. She's someone that we want to be friends with, but we don't think that she would do the job that we want."
Yeah.
And I was really upset and really offended at first, and then I thought, actually, well, first of all, I know I could do serious. I just choose not to. That's just not my vibe. Second of all, if go like pick a vicar, I've got no time for you. But you get to know what you're good at, and you know how to promote it. And you're right. People come to you if they like your stuff, and if they don't, then hopefully they're not twats and they'll just go in a different direction.
And I think that's why I never end up with what I would class as bad couples. Do you know what I mean?
Yes. When people say to you, like, "Oh, have you ever had a horrible couple?" And I'm like, "Well, no,
I haven't.
gravitate.
I've never ever had clients that I've just been like, I am dreading this. I'm dreading, making their cake, working with them. Never ever have I had that. And I think, like you say, that's because I have built a reputation for my style, what I do, how I am. I'm very open on my social medias. People see me as a person. And it's like, if you don't like me, don't book me in the first place. And I do think that's the case. Like, a lot of people don't.
100%.
And that's fine.
I think you have to like, that's one of the things I always say is you have to like your suppliers. You have to like the people that you're working with, especially when it's something that's so important to you. You have to like, there's so many people that are so talented. Why would you pick an arsehole?
Yeah, exactly. You have to like their vibe.
That's going to be
a different vibe.
That's our caption of the episode. Why would you pick an arsehole?
Why would you pick an arsehole? You can have perfect cakes.
Just that on its own. Don't pick your arsehole.
It is really true. You've got to resonate, because I'm very potty mouthed. I speak my mind. I will. If somebody comes to me and says, "Oh, we're thinking of this idea," I will be like, "No, we're not doing that." Or I'm not going to just be like, "Okay." Like, I'm going to advise you and I'm going to direct you into a direction that creates something that you are absolutely going to love, because maybe they come to you with something I'm like, that wouldn't work. Like, for what you're doing and your vibe, that wouldn't work. Like, we are in the industry, the ones who know what we're talking about, and couples are usually really welcoming of being advised by people who know what they're doing.
They've not done it before. They don't know what they haven't got a clue. They're looking for.
A lot of the time, the cakes I get sent are because they've done a very vague Pinterest search. And as we know with Pinterest, you get shown one cake, you save that. You'll be shown everything that looks exactly the same as that. Like, that is the vibe you're going down. And a lot of the time, they'll send me something and I'm like, yeah, but you could have this. And they're just like, what? That's a possibility? I'm like, yes, anything is possible. We can do this.
You're like Mary Poppins.
I'll play with cake if you like.
What I particularly like about your socials, and I got stuck down a rabbit hole at 3 a.m. this morning, looking at them, is I find your videos very therapeutic.
A lot of people say that. A lot of people,
I do.
And a lot of couples love seeing. So this is something I've actually brought in for 2025 as well. Is I'm going to be giving the couples a video of me making their cake.
It's like you're like in OnlyFans, but there's another website that's like OnlyFans.
We're going to call it Only Buns or Only Pans.
No, Only Buns. Nice buns, good buns.
I think Only Pans would be better. Only Pans.
I'll work on it.
Okay, we'll get that one going. But yeah, no, I like, and it's something that, because I always am looking for extra things that I could offer my couples, as a little extra service, because again, although they're getting a lovely cake and that is the thing that their guests will remember, for the couple, they'll remember the experience. Like, getting a wedding cake from a luxury wedding cake maker is an experience. It's not just a cake that you're getting at the end. It's the consultations, it's the tasters, it's feeling like you're valued. And although we've got, as with you, like all these other weddings going on, your wedding is the most important thing. It's not.
And that's like a law in my business, is that it is so important to me that every couple on that day believe that they are the only person getting married and they are the most important people on planet Earth. And that's how they should feel.
And this is why I don't overbook myself as well, because yes, I probably could deliver 3 or 4 wedding cakes in a day, but to message a bride or a groom or whoever you're organise it, a planner, and be basically being like, oh, okay, I'm going to arrive at this time because I've got 3 other cakes to deliver today, and I'm going to go and, do you know what I mean? Like, or I'm running late because I was delivering another wedding cake. Like, that isn't the vibe that you want to give off. You want to give off, like you say, yes, it is not the only thing I have on this whole summer, but if you've got your professionalism, you've got your processes really slick and in line, you can make them feel like that. Because you do, obviously, like, I do care about every single cake, which is why I only take 2 a week maximum. But at the same time, we do, you know, there is a bigger picture. And for the couple, their cake is the most important cake because it's their wedding. But you've got to make them feel like that their cake is the most important cake to you at that period of time. But that starts early. That doesn't start just the week before their wedding, I don't think.
No. It starts from the first phone call.
Exactly.
To perfect cake. Starts from the first inquiry. Tell me a bit about your Cake Makers Collective.
Cake Makers Collective. So that is my other business, which I run with 2 other lovely cake makers we don't live anywhere near each other. So I am Midlands, West Midlands, one is Cambridge and one is the Lake District. So we are literally the 3 points of the country. We all met a long time, 3 years ago now, via a cake school and basically got chatting, and we set up this business, which is live online cake decorating demos. So you can log on, you can basically log on, and you can learn anything because we put on all different sort of demos, different topics, skills. It's not a subscription based. You join and, you know, you're there for a month and you learn probably 3 stuff you want to learn and nothing else. Everything else is waste. You just book on to whatever you want to learn. So I've had people who, for example, are a bridesmaid making somebody's wedding cake for their wedding, who will join demos because they want to learn, because it's so accessible and cheap in comparison to a lot of classes and things you can have. So a lot of couples, if they are going down the route of getting somebody to make their cake, I always say to them, and I do this at wedding fairs, not that I do many anymore, but if I ever am at a showcase, I don't really do wedding fairs, but if I'm ever at a showcase and the couple are like, oh, my auntie's making my wedding cake, which I'm immediately like, yeah, okay. I always give them out a thingy that says like, well, give this to your auntie then, because she probably wants to learn how to dowel a cake to make sure it doesn't fall over. And, you know, all of these sort of things. It's actually a great sort of way to learn to make a cake for that special occasion, because you don't want to invest, which 100%, there are people out there who do not want to spend the money on a wedding cake. I get that, 100%.
But also, I actually think if someone said to me, would you make my wedding cake? Yes, I would. I would say it would be lovely to say, oh, and I paid for you to sign up to this online course so that you could learn this skill and this trick. And what a nice thing to do. Have yourself a cup of tea and mince pie. And I think that would be like, oh, okay, that's fun. Like making it a real thing rather than just, you know, Sal, can you make the cake?
I've had people come to me for one-to-one classes at my studio where they are making an occasion cake or a wedding cake because they've been asked, and it's usually, like you say, a nan, an auntie, a mum, who have been asked to make a cake for a couple. I actually had one last year. She was a friend. She was making it for her. She dabbled in baking, but, you know, she doesn't really make wedding cakes. Yeah. So she came to a one-to-one class exactly for that. She just wanted to, some of them we do it in advance so they can practice, but there was one who came and actually made the cake. Like they made the cake under tuition so that they could then go and present a beautiful cake rather than a cake that they're like, it's going to fall over.
I think that would be so fun.
It would be fun. And also you're learning a skill at the same time. It's not like you're just doing it for that cake. Do you know what I mean? You can then do it for your other friend's
exactly.
cake.
It's like, what's the old saying? Teach a man to fish.
Exactly. And he'll never go hungry. I think
teach a granny to towel.
And people always ask me though, people always say like, why are you teaching people to do your job? Because surely that will put you out of business. And I'm like, no, because what it's capturing is the people who don't want to book, they wouldn't book me anyway. Do you know what I mean? Like they wouldn't book me. Obviously, a lot of my custom with teaching is cake makers, other cake makers who want to upskill and everything, which is amazing.
Okay.
But there are end users that also do it because they don't want or can't afford to buy a cake and they want to learn to do it for future cakes. So it's almost like that's future planning, isn't it, as well?
Yeah.
So it's not losing me business. It's just meeting a demographic that's different. Like it's almost.
Do you do like hen parties or like
do you know,
like
I used to, but I don't anymore because one, I never have time normally.
Yeah.
And they are the amount of stuff you have to run them, like quantities of everything. And again, it's one of those things that in order to charge an amount, this is my business head on, to make a decent amount of money, people aren't willing to pay it. You can make some money. I'm not saying it's not something you could do. You definitely could make money, but I've got quite greedy in my old age. And I'm like, if I'm not making the equivalent of what I'd make with a wedding cake, then it's not worth it for me. I'd rather not do anything and sit and watch telly.
Oh, I really want to come and do something in your studio though.
That's it now. I want to come. I mean, yeah, we could make you like say, in my studio, I do 1-to-1, 2-to-1 classes. So maximum 2, probably could get in 3, but after that. But again, it's what you promote yourself. I'm a luxury wedding cake maker. I make luxury cakes, and therefore my teaching will be of a similar vibe. Do you know what I mean? I don't want it to be like a bit of a free for all and at the village hall doing 25 people for the WI. You know, like I want everything that I do to represent the brand that I am, because I've built up that brand to be as it is. And therefore, I everything has to be in line with that. And I think that's what a lot of people forget, is that when you build something in a certain way, a brand, everything, your marketing, your stationery, your packaging, everything has to be, you can't just go, well, I'll just do it cheaper to save money. Like it's all got to be along the same lines. Otherwise.
Yeah. You have to invest in yourself, your brand, your product, your customer service. Yeah. Exactly. You have to think about everything, don't you?
100%.
And you're right. By teaching other people a skill, it's not taking away what you do, because what you do is no one can replicate you. There's no other you out there.
And if people want to buy the people who want what I have, they don't want to learn to do it themselves. They want someone else to do it. That's the whole point. Like that's why they want someone to make them a wedding cake like that, because nobody else could do that for them. So yeah, it's not taking away. I think I always say to anyone, any cake businesses, that, as long as you are better than they are at a skill, you can teach it. And it's not taking your business away at all. It's not. You're just reaching a different demographic, basically.
Yeah. No, you're very wise, aren't you? Have you done any celebrities? Or royal family? I feel like you would have done a shooting scene for the Queen.
I haven't actually. The only cake I do you know what? I don't know whether it's because of the area I'm in. Not that I do travel UK wide with my cakes, but I feel like maybe if I was a London baker, do you know what the irony with celebrities is? They always go for bakers that I've never heard of. And I wonder whether it's because, one, they either ask for it for free, which obviously they would not get from me. If I haven't birthed you, you're not getting a free cake. And also, I think they probably go for cheap. And I don't mean cheap as in the cakes always look amazing, but I feel like people cheapen, reduce the prices because it's a celebrity, which as far as I'm concerned, they can pay more because they can afford it.
Literally.
I think the only sort of celebrity that I've made a cake for, which was not commissioned, was for Jeremy Clarkson and Lisa.
I was just going to say, I feel like you would have done Richard Hammond or Jeremy Clarkson.
Yeah, so I made, this year, I decided for Lisa's birthday to make, like I said, I don't do free cake.
I saw this. I saw this on your Instagram. Tell me.
100% a marketing ploy. 100%. Although I do love that, like we love Clarkson's Farm in our household. We're country people. And obviously that my target market, my clientele is farmers, country people. That for my painted cakes, that is my, ideal client. So I was like, who is the one person that is probably like that, represents, currently it's Jeremy Clarkson. So I was like, we've got to get a cake in front of him. And it was so fun. It was like a little mini mission, because obviously they hadn't ordered it. And I wasn't going to be taking it. I did have visions of why they invite me into the house and go
a cup of tea, Charlotte.
So I decided I'm going to do it. And we were going basically for our wedding anniversary, mine and my husband's wedding anniversary, nobody else's wedding anniversary. That'd been weird. We decided we were going to go to Diddley Squat, their shop, because we go to the Cotswolds a lot. We actually got engaged in the Cotswolds. So we decided to have like a weekend away, and we were like, we'll go to Diddley Squat. So then I was like, I'm going to make them a cake. I'm going to make a cake and we're going to take it and we're going to see if we can get it like to them. That is the challenge.
Oh,
So
I
thought I'll paint everything on it that is personal to them for the latest series, because I thought that, you know what I mean? Like they can't not kind of do anything with it when it's so personal. And it happened to turn out that it was actually Lisa's birthday the week before. So I was like, even more, if it's a birthday cake, you cannot be turning that down, can you? Like,
like it happened to be, not that you'd been Googling like everything about them for the last 6 months.
My plan was to make a cake for Jeremy. That was my plan. I was planning on making it for him, but my husband came home literally a week before and was like, did you know? Because I didn't follow Lisa. I mean, I did. I loved her. She's absolutely amazing. But he said, did you know it was her birthday this week? And I was like, no, but this is even more of like
even better.
So I was like,
better.
I painted the cake and I put it all over my socials initially and was like, we've got to get the word out. I'm taking this today. I need people to get there. And honestly, Instagram did its thing. People were like, I've messaged Caleb. Oh, and what's I can't remember his name. The
sexy accountant
type.
The
advisor. Yeah. So he was like, I've messaged his PA and told them that they're coming and he's going to let them know.
God.
It was so fun. It turned into this like little mini mission. And then we like turned up with this cake and I was a bit like, what the hell actually am I going to do with this cake? Because I was always expecting people to greet me as I arrived and be like, oh, it's Charlotte with our cake, which obviously they weren't going to. So I sort of got there and I went round to, they have like their eatery bit, like their burgers and everything. And I just went round the back and I found this lovely lady who looked sort of official, you know, not just sort of someone just flipping burgers. It was somebody who looked like they knew what they were talking about. They had a laptop at the time. So I was like, they look like they know what they're talking about. So I went up to her and I said, I've got this cake. It's for Lisa for her birthday. I said, she hasn't ordered it, but obviously I'd love her to have it. And she was like, I'm going up to the house in a bit for a production meeting with everybody. And I was just like, oh, this is the right lady to get. So I gave her the cake. And then it was just a waiting game. It was just sort of like, we hung around for a bit. So I was like, well, what if it gets up there at the time and they like message and be like, do you want to come? So I was just like, we hung I did, but I had. None of them came into fruition. So we had a burger, we had a beer. It was lovely. It's very nice. We did not queue for 2 hours to get into the shop. That was a waste of time. We did see Jeremy. They were filming at the time. They had drones up and they had all the cameramen there and he drove like right past us on the tractor. You know, when you be like, hey.
Just throw it at him.
And then literally it was just a waiting game and everyone was asking me, have you heard anything? Have you heard anything? I was like, no, I've not heard anything. I don't know. Like I've had no messages. I've had nothing. And I just sat there and thought, oh, this better do something because this has been so hyped up now. And then Lisa she shared it on her Instagram, a video of it, which obviously was the plan. Like that was the aim, was to get it on one of their social medias. Because obviously those are the people that I want seeing it. And to be fair, I have got a bit of business from it. It was a very good marketing ploy.
A bit of business means a lot of business.
No, three or four cakes. Okay. But like, it was a very good marketing. Somebody messaged me and was like, is this just a really good marketing ploy? I was like, it might possibly be.
Yeah, of course. I mean, that's why famous people get free shit all the time, isn't it? Just in the vain hope that they'll love it.
I don't do free stuff for the sake of free stuff. I would only do it for the purpose of it getting me something else because I'm a business and I don't believe in doing, obviously, like, that makes me sound the most uncharitable person.
I know,
do things for that reason, but not for like celebrities and things like that. I'm like, no, unless I see it as being a good business decision.
Yeah,
that's the only time I will do something where it's, you know, a bit like shoots. We do wedding shoots all the time. And I don't get paid for them, but for me, it gets me content, it gets me shared, it gets me in with different suppliers and venues. And you don't do it because you enjoy just making the cake. You do it for the repercussions that come from it, basically. It's all
what you're saying is that you're going to spend nearly 2 hours chatting to me of a morning for no reason. Yeah. Not for any enjoyment or pleasure.
Just the business is going to get me at the end. Yeah, that's it. That's literally it.
Well, if it helps, I come from not far from you. I come from Ledbury. So Yeah. So I'm farming background. I'll tell him. I'll go back to the Barlinas and I'll tell him.
But this is the thing. The funny thing is with the wedding industry, and everybody always asks, how do you get into wedding cakes? How do you sell wedding cakes? It's who you know. It is who you know.
100%.
It is getting yourself into the right suppliers, getting your name out so that, and they like you, and that they'll recommend you the right venues for your aesthetic. It's not just any venue. I'm very selective on the venues that I will become recommended suppliers for, because they've got to be one that, their clients are what I do. If the venue is a very low budget DIY venue, they're not going to be spending £1,000 on a wedding cake.
But also, don't you find, before I started working at a wedding venue, which was over 10 years ago now, the only weddings that I had ever been to up until the age of 22 were marquees in fields.
Yeah.
That is what the people that come from where we're from, that is what you have, because you are a farming family, you live on a farm. I had a marquee in a field. Like that's just what I literally...
I had a teepee, actually. I didn't have a marquee, I had a teepee.
There you go. You're trendier than I am. But that's literally what people do. I'd never ever until my mid-20s been to a wedding at a venue.
Indoors.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. You've got to market to where your clientele is. And it's the same with, it's the same with everything. I obviously work closely. When you're at weddings, I always say there's two sets of people. So I'd love to know where you think you fall in this. There's two sets of suppliers. There's the aesthetic suppliers who are dressing the room and making the place as is. And then there's the bridal suppliers. They're the ones, making the bride look amazing. And then you've got, I think actually I'd class yours as the third one. So you've got like the really, really, really important ones that if they weren't there on the day, genuinely, photographer. Do you know what I mean? Like the ones that they are there on your day. They are part of your day. Yeah. They are really important to make sure that actually the wedding happens. The visual, the room stuff, you can do some of it yourself. Yeah, you can go without some of it. Same with makeup and hair and all of that. Like they're the bridal party. They're the ones who are making the brides and the bridesmaids and the grooms, whoever they want to work with, look absolutely incredible. But they do their job and they go. We set up the room and we go. You guys are the ones who endure the wedding.
I'm not a photographer or a videographer or a planner who sticks around for hours on end, but I get there early.
But if you didn't turn up, the wedding wouldn't happen. So it's probably
I know. Thank you.
If I didn't turn up with the cake, the wedding would still happen. It would still be a wedding. They just wouldn't have a cake.
Yeah, no, I'm integral. I'm an integral cog in the wedding machine. But
marketing ploy. She put herself in the industry in a role that cannot be not had.
Well, babe, I'm due in 2.5 weeks and I've got a wedding on Saturday.
This Saturday?
Yeah.
You're fine. That would be a really entertaining story for the couple at their wedding.
Everyone has said that to me. Every time I panic, because I've had a lot in the last 6 weeks, and every time I've said, what if my waters break mid-vow? They're like, well, I'm not being funny, but that, as long as it doesn't, get all over the dress, like that would be amusing.
Do you know what? Being pregnant and being in the wedding industry is genuinely one of the hardest things to negotiate because one, I planned my whole pregnancies around off-season, like genuinely.
Wow.
Yes.
Wow.
It was a
People are like, people thought I was mad because I'm due on the 21st of December. And I'm like, no, I planned this. Yeah. I can't get pregnant in May. I'd be fucked.
Like to the point where I'd be like, right, that's the cutoff. If I'm not pregnant by that point, we're going back and then we're starting again later. Like it genuinely is a thing.
Yeah. And we had that phone call. We had that conversation.
The stress of negotiating an industry where, for those people, it is the most important thing for them. That day is the biggest day of their life.
Yeah.
But I might pop and I might not produce it for you. Like it's so, I think this is again where they get to know you as a person. You build a relationship with your clients that you can say to them, by the way, I'm pregnant. I'm due. This is your choice now. Do you want to keep the booking? Do you not want to keep the booking? You know what I mean? Like you need to be really clear with them. And like you say, the people who have picked you for you are probably like, well, actually, do you know what? That'll be fun. I challenge it. We'll put bets on. They've probably got bets on with their guests to see whether it happens at their own wedding. But this is what I mean. Like, this is why you've got to build a relationship with your clients. And I do not, honestly, being pregnant and having babies when you're in the wedding industry is so hard. So hard. The ambiguity is just constantly, because it's not like a case of like, oh, well, if I let them down, it's not the end of the world. Like, if you have to let them down a week before their wedding because you've gone into labour early or something like that, that is like, we will do anything and everything to. I remember with my second, I had a wedding straight after he was supposed to be born. And I said to them, I had an emergency cake maker on, we'd had meetings. She was there to back me up, to do the cake. We'd had every contingency plan in place in case I couldn't do it. Because I was like, you're going to get your cake. Like, we will make sure this happens. But it's so stressful. So stressful.
It's so stressful. It's a lot of pressure. And like, I had a vow renewal 2 weeks ago that was actually sort of slightly up north from you. About 20 minutes up from Kidderminster. And so, because I now live in Bath, so that was quite a trek. And my husband was like, just cancel it. I was like, no, you don't.
It's wedding. You always have vow renewal.
Cancel. Yeah, and also because it's such a personal thing that I do, even though I've had plan Bs for the last 6 weddings that I've done, they want me to do it. Yeah. I've written it. I'm their friend now. My friend said to me the other day, like, you can't even be ill. There's no one that can like replace you on the day. I'm like, no, I know.
You can't. You genuinely can't. The pressure that we have, and I think this is what people don't realise. Like a birthday cake, you have a birthday every year. If you can't do that cake, you have to cancel that cake for whatever personal reason. It's, you know what I mean? It's not the end of the world. They're going to have another birthday next year. Get it next year. Do it at a later date. Do it in a month's time, whatever. But when it's a wedding, no, they're not going to go, okay, we'll change our whole wedding date because you can't make it. Like, that's not going to happen. It is genuinely a detriment to their day. There is so much pressure. And obviously working in the food industry as well, regardless of being pregnant, working in the food industry, we can't be ill. Because at least if you've got, if you've got D&V and you're a celebrant, you can kind of hide it for a bit and hopefully just get away with the ceremony. With us,
I've had that, darling. I've had that at a ceremony. I wore an adult nappy.
But with us, we're not even allowed. We're not allowed to make the cake if we have that. So it's almost like you've got to make friends in your industry and have backups just in case any of these. The flooding, we've recently had flooding here in Toynbee very badly. I'm fine. We're not affected because we're higher up. We're not kind of in town. And luckily, I didn't have any weddings. But I thought, if I've got a wedding that day, I need to get there. I will hire a tractor. I will get there because the expectation is that they're getting what they've ordered, whatever way or which way that has to be. We've got to do it. We can't. Kids are off school. Tough luck. I'm working. You're watching telly. Like, you don't have a choice. You can't just be like, oh, I won't do it.
Can't be asked today. Don't really feel like it. No, I know. And especially if I have a Barney with my husband and then I'll be like, and marriage is the most beautiful, the most beautiful of things. We live near Bradford-on-Avon and it was in the news with the floods. And I can't remember his name now, which is awful because I've known him for years, but he goes by the Cake Architect. Okay. And his studio was completely flooded. Yeah. I know.
We're lucky where we are. We, like I say, if we flooded, then it would be like an apocalypse. But it doesn't mean to say you can get anywhere. So you can be.
At least you've got cake, darling. At least you've got cake. You're not going to starve.
Made my husband buy a Hilux, especially so that if I needed emergency travel arrangements in floodwaters, we can get that.
So you do travel all over with your cakes?
Yeah, I do. So the furthest I've ever gone with a cake is 5.5 hours delivery, one way. But then, so normally I only travel with my painted cakes because those are the ones that a lot of my design-led cakes and the more modern cakes, you could probably find someone closer who could do a similar sort of thing. Do you know what I mean? Even if they emailed me and said, can I copy your design? Do you know what I mean? Like, you can probably find someone to do something who's closer. Whereas with the painted cakes, there's very few people. There are other people around the country who do it. We're generally, again, at Four Corners. One's very high up north. I think she's stopped now. One's down in Cornwall. So it's, but the style I do, which is very, very highly detailed, there's no one else that does what I do. So generally, if people want what I do, they will pay. They will pay for me to travel there, sometimes having to do overnight stays, all of that sort of stuff to get But, you know, they have to really want it. They have to really want it. And which is great and lovely that people will do that. And me now goes, yeah, that's fine. Like next year, I think about 50%, if not slightly more, of my weddings are what I class as distance weddings, which are over 2.5 hours away.
That's a lot of extra time on you, though, isn't it? And away from the boys and everything.
And I sit here now being like, it's fine. And then like 2025, Charlotte is like, I hate you. I absolutely hate you.
You bitch.
Every week, just pouring the UK. And I hate driving. I just can't stand it. I just get bored. So boring driving.
Well, I know a podcast that you can listen to.
Oh, well, I mean, there may be some famous cake makers on there, so maybe we'll have a listen to that one, hey?
I feel like I should let you go. We've literally been talking for 2 hours. If you and I were drunk together, I tell you, wouldn't that be... Let's do that.
Safe to say, more people would dislike me if we then recorded it.
Honestly, I can't wait to be drunk.
To be honest, do you know what? We're no longer. I feel like this will be the end of this podcast because you are immediately going to disown me. I don't drink.
You don't drink, motherfucker. we were best friends for 1 hour and 53 minutes. We were best friends.
Not through like I don't drink. But I just don't really like alcohol, so I don't like. So me, this like I would be your drunk friend, but sober. Like I would 100% be there, but I don't.
To be fair,
it's fine.
I can see this about you. People say to me, not when I get completely bladdered, but people say to me, I don't know if you're drunk or sober or if you're being serious or not because I'm not someone, and I feel like you're the same. That I don't need alcohol to be loud.
No, exactly, and I don't need alcohol to be at a party and dancing on the dance floor on my own like a crazy fool. Like that's fine. I can do that without.
We're a cheap date, aren't we?
I have a very cheap date, like water, to the point where my husband doesn't even get me drinks anymore. He always asks me, what do you want to drink? And I'll tell him, and then he forgets that I'm even here. Like, it was a running joke for a very long time in our relationship before we got married. He'd always be like, do you want a drink? I'm like, yeah, I'll have like a Coke or something. And then he'd come back without my drink, and I'm like, where's mine?
Well,
did you want one? Darling. Yeah, and asked me. You asked me for it. I told you what I wanted. You didn't
listen.
You are.
They don't listen, do they? They don't take in what we say.
I mean, if I said I want an Aperol Spritz or whatever they bloody call these fancy cocktails nowadays, is that even a thing? It is, isn't it?
I mean, I wouldn't call it a fancy cocktail. I'd call it like there's 3 ingredients. It's essentially a mixer. But yeah. Aperol Spritz, yeah.
I feel like my alcohol knowledge is definitely not at your level, if I'm honest.
No.
Rosé.
I know it all.
A rosé or... But do you know what I do choose? If I am out drinking, and my friends think this is the funniest thing, and I like to feel like I'm on holiday. It's probably the only time I do drink is on holiday. So my drink of choice would be a Malibu and pineapple.
I was literally thinking Malibu and Coke. Malibu and pineapple is absolutely delicious. It's like a sweet.
I can't deal with all of these current modern like cocktails, like just overpriced. Give me a Blue Lagoon, a Sex on the Beach, or a Malibu and pineapple, and I'm there. I'm fine.
I imagine you at a young farmer's ball with a Smirnoff Ice.
Oh yes, or a hoop.
Girl.
You can tell how old I am now. I mean, being allowed at a young farmer's do, I'd probably not be allowed in now. But
I used to go with my hip flask.
Pardon?
I used to go with my hip flask to all the farmers.
Many years of my life was spent. I wasn't a young farmer, but obviously by proxy. You know, one of those sort of ones who you'd still go to all the barn what do they even call it? Barn dances and young farmers dues and things. And end up absolutely trolleyed on very weak alcohol that you must have stomached so much of it in order to get in the states you were in.
Can you imagine that now?
And very strong cider.
Very strong cider. I once was at university and I told my professor that I'd been spiked. And I hadn't. I just had 4 Westerns vintage.
Bacardi Breezers. That was the thing. And it was WKDs before the whole VK. I'm too old for VKs. That's like the modern one, isn't it?
No, that's a whole different drink. No, that's absolute nonsense. Are you very busy before Christmas? Have you got many cakes to get out?
No, I generally take December off.
Oh, babe, how
No,
wonderful.
I've got a birthday cake a couple of days before Christmas, which is very unusual for me. I don't normally do anything because I strictly, and when I say strictly, as in I will not work between the 24th of December through to after the New Year. Like, I just won't do it because, again, as
Excellent.
like our jobs, we don't get a lot of time off. And it's the one strict period of time that I'm like, no, I am not working. And normally in December, I don't get I don't get a lot of winter weddings. Next year, though, more winter weddings than summer weddings.
Really?
Weird. 3 in December next year.
I love a winter wedding.
I don't mind one, but I feel like it comes with a lot of issues of like, is it going to be snowing? Is it going to be flooded?
Yeah.
Am I going to be able to get there? Like, everything becomes more complicated in a winter wedding.
Yes, that's true.
Definitely.
That is true. I can't get changed in a lay-by in a winter wedding. I like to get changed in a lay-by.
I mean, you could. It's dark, at least, for the majority of the day, so it's more discreet in that sense.
No, I like the risk when I get changed in a lay-by.
I feel like you were the type that in your younger days with your husband, you were in a lay-by, risking it that way as well.
Of course I was. I'm a lay-by kind of gal. What can I say? Mutton dressed as lamb, fur coat, no knickers. That's what they call me. I'll let you go, my angel. Thank you. Just before I do, what are all your socials? Where can people find you?
So I'm very basic in the sense that it's at Perfect Cakes Co. on every social media.
Okay.
Don't like change. And you can find me on Insta, you can find me on TikTok, and you can find me on Facebook, but don't go on Facebook because, I mean, does anyone even use Facebook anymore that isn't in America?
No.
But yeah, Instagram and TikTok is where you'll majority find me. TikTok is where you'll find raw me. Instagram is where you'll find professional me. Let's just say it that way.
See, this is what I do in terms of like, I tell people Instagram is probably a little bit too much of me, and my podcast is way too much of me. Like, when my brides are like, oh, I told my mum that you do a podcast, I'm like, don't
let them watch it. Yeah, exactly. TikTok, I'm like, don't go over there if you're easily offended, please, because to be fair, my TikTok, I usually say my TikTok is for cake makers for educational purposes. So that's for that side of my clientele, people who want to learn. Obviously, brides find me on there as well. But my Instagram is for my wedding couples. That's my sort of what you'll be getting. Yeah,
professional Charlotte Cope.
Perfect cakes.
Yes, perfect cakes. Thank you so much for talking to me. I've had an absolute ball. I've not been this cheery for weeks.
Really enjoyed it for my unsociable self. I've absolutely loved it.
So this week's RSVP is a DM from Samuel, and he writes, "Hi Olivia, my fiancée Beth listens to your podcast, always bangs on about it. Sweet, I think. She and I are getting married next year, and a friend of ours is officiating the ceremony. Otherwise, we would definitely book you. Our question to you is this: I am Jewish and she is Church of England. How can we incorporate both traditions into our ceremony? We're not hugely into our faiths, but our families are, and we want to show them respect. Love to hear what you think, Samuel." Okay, so I actually get this quite a lot, and this is one of the main benefits of having a celebrant ceremony or a non-religious, non-registrar ceremony, is that you can say whatever you want and you can combine whatever faiths, religions, cultures that you want to. In terms of Jewish and C of E, something that I've done before, which I think is really lovely and is sort of like more of a nod to the religion than like a full-blown Jewish ceremony, is to include little bits here and there. So the obvious one is the breaking of the glass at the end of the ceremony to represent the marriage being complete and the ceremony being over and the party begins, and everyone who doesn't like to say mazel tov, that's just like a thing. We've seen it on the movies. Who doesn't want to say mazel tov? It's one of my favourites. So the breaking of the glass is a great one. It's everyone knows about it. Everyone knows it's a Jewish thing. So if your guests aren't necessarily Jewish themselves, they'll still know and understand what it means. But also you can explain it. Your officiant, your friend can explain it and the meaning behind it as well. And then something else I've done in the past, and I'm doing again this year for a mixed faith couple, is that a Jewish ceremony traditionally has a thing called 7 blessings. I'm not going to pretend I know a lot about it like I should, but essentially it is a very traditional part of a Jewish ceremony that I think can be really beautifully used in a non-Jewish ceremony. It's essentially 7 blessings delivered by a member of the congregation, and sort of if you whittle it down to its essence, each blessing it's not even a Jewish thing. Like, it's just like a lovely gesture, a lovely thing, you know, like, may your marriage be blessed with health and happiness, may your marriage be blessed with this, and it's just a really nice thing to do. And I've done it before with friends whereby, as the officiant, I have introduced it and explained the meaning behind it and why the couple in question wanted to do it, and then they had 7 friends who were all sat in random parts amongst all the guests, and they took it in turns and they just stood up where they were sat and read out their blessing, sort of like, you know, the scene in Love Actually when the bands start playing, a bit like a flash mob kind of thing. And it worked really, really beautifully. So I think there's definitely ways that you can incorporate your religion without it going full hog, but also, you know, being respectful. So I hope that helps, Samuel. And if your friend drops out, give me a call.
Thank you so much for listening. It really does mean the world. If you find this podcast even remotely helpful or moderately entertaining, share with all your friends and family. You can DM me any questions, queries, if you want to share any stories on the podcast Instagram at I'll Marry You Podcast. Get in touch. I want to hear all your tall tales. See you soon.
I'll Marry You is a podcast by Olivia Coleman. The music is Mr. Sunnyface by Wayne Jones, and the show is produced and edited by Drew Toynbee.